All right, let's quit goofing off and we'll get right into day 9 of 75 Refined. The quote of the day today comes from C.S. Lewis, the great author and apologist. He says, "Lose your life and you will save it. Submit with every fiber of your being and you will find eternal life." Again, that's C.S. Lewis. If you've never read Mere Christianity, I highly recommend it. Obviously, he wrote The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, all the Chronicles of Narnia, but his books on Christianity and faith are spectacular. So today we wrapped up Leviticus. So we started climbing down the mountain, as I talked about yesterday, how Leviticus is built in a way that everything goes up towards the atonement and then comes down from there. In chapter 16, I believe, is the atonement. So we're coming down the mountain, and in chapter 18 talks about distinction and sexual holiness. So first he tells God tells Israel not to live like Egypt or Canaan, and he sets up sexual boundaries, and these are clearly defined. And these are part of the moral law that is still a standard today, different than civil or ceremonial laws. Holiness is not vague. Spirituality, the covenant, faithfulness touches intimacy. God cares about intimacy. In 19, we talk about justice and neighborly love, care for the poor, having honest business practices, not to oppress people, no hatred in your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, right? This is a theme that we see in the New Testament. Holiness is not just a ritual, it's relational. This really feels like almost like Sinai revisited, if you will. Chapter 20, we talk about judgment for idolatry, judgment for sexual sin. A lot of the sexual sin is repeated here, so you know that it's okay, this is serious, right? Priestly standards are reinforced in 21 to 22. Again, it's that mirror that we see in the beginning of Leviticus, and then again later in Leviticus, we see that mirror effect. So more priestly rules here. And then we get into the appointed feasts, Sabbath, Passover, the first fruits, weeks, trumpets, Day of Atonements, booths. So all of these feasts are appointed during this time. And then having a sacred space for justice. The lampstand is to continually burn. The bread of presence remains. Jubilee, it talks about how to reset debts and what the year of Jubilee looks like and what happens there. The land being returned to families. Blessings and curses are discussed in 26, and vows and devotion in 27. Leviticus moves from sacrifice to atonement to a life shaped by holiness. But the message is clear. Redemption changes behavior. But here's the tension, okay? Check this out. The law defines holiness, yet it can't produce it internally. Okay, the land can vomit out sin. Exile is real. Failure is anticipated. Leviticus ends with a warning and hope. All right? So covenant obedience is required, but covenant faithfulness ultimately depends on God. Here's how Christ fulfills all of this, because remember, we're always going back to Christ. Always going back to Christ. Perfect holiness. Perfect love for neighbor. Perfect obedience. He's the true Jubilee, right? He's the true Passover. He is the final atonement. He doesn't just define holiness, he embodies it, and he allows us to have that within us. We have that divine nature on the inside of us. So this is really where it ends for us. And then tomorrow we get into the book of Numbers, which I'll talk about some of the history of the book of Numbers and really get into why I think Numbers is a bad name for the book, especially when it comes down to how they changed the names in the intertestamental period. So we'll talk about that. But I hope you guys are having a really good time going through 75 Refined. I hope you're challenging yourself. I hope you're finding this to be rewarding. And once again, leave in the comments below. I want to have some discussion, see how things are going for everybody. What are you learning? What are you taking away? What are you struggling with? What are you struggling through? And just what are you doing? Let's talk about this. Let's put this in the comments. How are you being intentional about the time that you're spending in the Word and in prayer? I know for me, with a family, life gets busy. I had to take time because I knew that we were going to be running some errands and I was going to be in the passenger seat today. And I was like, well, I could read the Bible while my wife is driving, but know that, probably gonna have a conversation, talk about, what we're doing and all this kind of stuff with the house projects. And I didn't want it to be background noise. I wanted to be intentional about it. So while the kids were having dinner, my wife was having dinner, I was like, okay, this is the time. I'm gonna throw my earbuds in. I'm gonna go through the Bible, and I finished it right in time to go to church for Bible study. So that's what I had to do to really be intentional about the time that I spent reading today. So tell me how that works for you, and we will see you tomorrow as we get into the book of Numbers.